Okay, well, the Schola is the liturgical choir of the Cardinal Vaughan Memorial School, which is where we're sat now in West London. The choir was founded in 1980 by a former headmaster of the school who wanted to try and raise the standard of the singing at the school. And so it's a boys' choir, just boys age 11 up to 18. And we try to run it along the same lines that you'd run a cathedral choir. So the boys rehearse every day, we sing services once a week, and then on top of that, what we do for school, we also do lots and lots of things outside of school, lots of singing at services and also concerts. And in addition to all of that, the choir also provides the chorus children for the opera at Covent Garden. Very often we do a lot of opera there. Lots of solo singing at Covent Garden as well. We've been lucky enough to be involved in a number of film soundtracks as well over the years. We do quite a lot of that sort of stuff. So you probably have heard the Cardinal Vaughan Schola without necessarily realising that you're listening to them on a number of very big films. And in terms of what makes it special, I suppose it is unusual to have a choir that's as ambitious as the Schola is within a state school or within a school context, and especially in a state school. Private schools in this country, the fee-paying schools, very often have choirs that sing in the classical style. It's less common to an extent in state schools, but so I think it's the ambition of it perhaps that makes it quite unusual and makes it, if you like, special, but it's for other people to decide whether it sounds special or not. But I think it's the ambition of it probably is the key. Well, yeah, I think it's very important that everybody, that the kids know what they're singing and why it was written, when it was written, a little bit about who wrote it and the context in which it's written. So an example would be we're currently, in preparation for Saturday, we're going to sing a piece by William Byrd called Civitas Sancti Tui on Saturday in the cathedral, and that piece talks about Jerusalem being desolate, and obviously it's got liturgical links into the gospel and what have you, but also it's very much the way that William Byrd himself would have felt, because he was living in England at the time when it wasn't allowed, when it was against the law to be a Roman Catholic, and he was unusual in that he was allowed to carry on living as a Roman Catholic, but nonetheless the words about Jerusalem being desolate would have been a reflection of how he felt about England as well as the biblical reference. And so things like that come up, and so in a sense I always say to the boys that being in the choir teaches you a great deal more than just singing. They learn obviously about history, about their faith, they learn languages, all sorts of things come up really, and obviously with the travelling that we get to do as well, they learn a great deal from that. So yeah, it's very important that they do put things into their cultural context. Okay, so I think that this is a comprehensive school, so we have all sorts of different boys in this school. It's a state school, so it's free to come to this school, and it's a comprehensive school, and the school works very hard to ensure that we have a comprehensive intake. So we have boys of all different abilities, and the overriding responsibility, therefore, I think, is to make sure that the kids of all different kind of abilities, academically and also musically, are able to be catered for within the department. And I'm quite proud of the fact that I feel that we do that. And so I think that if there's a philosophy, it's one of trying to be open to all and giving everybody what it is that they need, given their particular talents and skills. So if a boy has got a certain level of ability and has got a certain level of interest in music, then we can cater for that, and we provide the musical opportunities that boy needs. And if another boy is far more advanced and is playing to a very high level or singing to a very high level, then we can cater for that as well. And so I'm not sure if that's a philosophy or not, but certainly that's my approach, that we try, if we can, to do the very best to cover for everybody's needs here at the school. And I think that I guess you're never going to be able to to do that to perfection, but I think we do a pretty good job of that. And certainly music is not the case here that music is only for a few. And the Schola itself, which is in a sense meant to be a kind of elite ensemble, it's still rather large. There's still 60 or so boys singing the ensemble in the choir and the Schola, and the big school choir that we operate as well, which is open access, so anybody can come to that. That could be 100 kids will come to that. So it's not something that's music in this school isn't just a handful of kids doing it. It's loads and loads of kids. And so the whole culture of the school and the whole ethos of the school is musically sort of infused, if you like. Yeah, of course. So alongside all the things I mentioned earlier about the language skills and history and the knowledge of religion and all these different things that come up in the course of learning, of course, there's also all the kind of soft skills, things like leadership and teamwork. The ability to organise yourself, the ability to be disciplined, to be on time, to be reliable, to be committed, all these things that are key really to being successful in life are all taught very explicitly really by being in the Schola. There's no question that you can't be a successful member of the choir unless you're able to do these things. And the great joy of the Schola as well is, unlike let's say sporting teams, which also teach all those things, of course, but unlike sports teams, the Schola goes across the school. So you have boys aged 18 and boys aged 11, and a boy aged 11 can be just as important, or in fact often more important to the musical success of what you're trying to do at any given point. And so there's that wonderful kind of intermingling of all the different year groups and so inter-reliance, and the younger boys, of course, having the example of how to conduct themselves set by the older boys as well. Or at least that's the theory anyway. It doesn't necessarily always quite go that way. But yeah, it's certainly true that some of the boys will develop quickly and other boys are a little bit slower. And the vast majority of boys, when they arrive in the school at age 11, which is already quite old, and this is a major challenge I have, is that they don't come to me when they're 7 or 8. They arrive when they're 11, and lots of them have not really done anything that's similar to the Schola before. They may have done a little bit of singing in primary school, but it's not the kind of singing that we do, and it certainly isn't music based, so they often don't read music, and they need to be able to do that in here. In terms of and then some of them will come on very quickly, others of them will be slower. And I'm not sure that there's necessarily a huge amount. Obviously they're supported in the individual lessons they have in the ways that they need to be, and they're given all the help that they need there. And ultimately they learn a great deal more, I always tell them, from each other than they do from me. So the slightly older boys, the boys in the first year, are learning a great deal from the boys in the second year, and the boys in the third year are still singing treble, because they just they absorb it incredibly quickly. In terms of the way that goes, but obviously they do it at different rates, and we have various things we do. There's an online sight reading website that the boys can use to try and improve their sight reading. All the boys here, if they sing treble long enough, they'll do their grade 5 exam as well, which encourages them to sing as a soloist. Because one of the things that this choir is known for is that we have lots of soloists that come out of this choir. Lots of boys sing solos, Covent Garden, and different other contexts as well. And certainly that's a culture that I'm very proud of. That if there's a solo in the music, and I say to the boys, who wants the solo, I won't get one hand. I get lots of hands. They're all very keen to try and do this sort of thing. And we also do, every Christmas, we do an annual performance of Handel's Messiah. And I divvy out all the solos to the boys, and again they're very competitive and very keen to try and get their little solo moments. Yeah, they do. Ultimately, I suppose it is competitive, and inevitably you have some boys who are very strong, and other boys less confident and fluent. What I don't want to do is put a boy in a position where he's asked to sing a solo that he can't manage, and therefore it doesn't go well. Not because I'm necessarily worried, but I don't want to put that on the child. So it's a question of judging according to the children's ability, really, who's going to be able to pull things off, and then trying to share it out as equally as we can. There often isn't that much solo stuff to go around, so it can be a bit of a thing, who's going to do the solos. But I try, if I can, not to rely on the same boys. And certainly there's a CD we made recently, for example, of Christmas music for boys' voices with harp. And I think on there are 17 different boys singing solos. So that culture of solo singing exists certainly in the choir. But it can be quite competitive amongst them, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Well, it's certainly the case that the choir, it's the great joy of the choir, I think, in many ways. As I said earlier, that it cuts across the school, and it's the only thing that would. So, and the boy of 11 is equally important to the boy of 18, and they know that as well. And often, because the trebles often have the best voices, and the young men singing in the choir, inevitably their voices are new and are newly changed and are not as advanced as they will become. You often find that the stronger singing is in the trebles in the younger years rather than the older boys, and in terms of the way that you approach them, you have to approach it differently. So I don't see the older boys anything like as much as I see the younger ones, because the older ones, in theory, are able to read quite confidently, and they just don't need the time, and they wouldn't have the time because they're busy with lots of school things, as well. So they don't need as much time invested in them as the younger ones do. And because when they were younger, they had the time invested in them then, so that's the idea, that's how it works. And you do approach it very differently. My whole tone and approach would generally be very different with a treble rehearsal, which you have to run inevitably like it's a fun sort of activity, than with the older boys, where you might do it much more kind of seriously, the way you would treat adults, essentially, because you want them to try and respond as young men, as adults. So you treat them that way as much as you possibly can.
What do you think?
I thought it was tremendous. It was really a wonderful week. We had a fantastic time, 10 days or whatever it was. It was really obviously it's wonderful to be in Japan. I'd been there once before. One or two of the boys had been there before, but I think actually one of them had, but the other three hadn't. And the boys love travelling, and doing their singing, as indeed I do. I was very proud of the way that they performed. I thought that the four kids really, given that it was just four of them, I thought they did an outstanding job, really, and also the way that they held up to the challenges of the travel. The great fear with that few, just four boys. The great fear is that you get there and they become ill, because the travelling tires them out, or something happens, and one of them becomes, or two, or more than one of them becomes poorly. And then you're in real trouble, because how do you do the concerts? Because you haven't got anyone to fall back on, But they didn't. They were incredibly solid. And the very first concert we did, that day we'd had our journey out there, and then we'd had a further travelling to get to where we were in the north of Japan. It was quite, there was a lot being asked of them, really, and they did brilliantly. So it was very memorable and great fun, really, and I was very pleased to have been able to go with the boys. I don't know, really. I suppose just to be involved, to get involved, and to do the best that you can to try and sort of develop. The impression I get from certain things people have said is that the culture of singing in Japan isn't quite maybe where it was. I don't know if that's true or not, really, but is it not maybe as strong as it was? I don't know. And obviously COVID and that period where we all struggled when singing became a thing that was seen as being very bad, obviously, because of the nature of it. I'm sure that didn't help either, in the same way it didn't help here in lots of ways. And so I would just urge people to be involved, really, and to sort of and to try and do all you can to sort of develop the great joy of choral singing. I think if I was working in a school that didn't have a choir, if I was a teacher in a school, I guess I would approach it from the classroom first, if they have class music lessons, to do some singing there, and then to sort of just gently suggest to the boys and girls involved that they might want to come and do a little bit more. And then, of course, the key thing really is to have a purpose. There's got to be a reason why the choir's doing what it's doing. So you need to have a goal, whether that could be a concert, or it could be a service, or it could be, kind of whatever really. There needs to be a goal, there needs to be a reason for doing it, and you need to be brave and at some point be willing to have a goal that you don't know you're going to necessarily be able to achieve. And so that's my advice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I would just say to Mr. Tyler and his organisation that we were incredibly grateful for the opportunity to go out to your wonderful country really and to spend time there. We had the most fantastic time. It was really fantastic, and the way that he looked after us and the opportunities that he provided was really memorable and terribly good of him as well. So we were very, very pleased to have been asked to come out and represent the UK, as it were, with all there are very many boys' choirs in the UK, and I'm sure that they'd all have been delighted to go to Japan. So we were delighted to be asked and very grateful to him, and hopefully we can do it again at some point in the future. That would be wonderful. Thank you.